Welcome back to A Fine Time for Healing, a place for your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being are all that matter. So put your feet up, relax, and enjoy today's show. Our journey on earth often looks the same for each of us. We are raised, acquire knowledge, make our way through life, striving to find our true nature. Yet that quest for self-awareness can be derailed by unresolved trauma deep within, creating an emotional rift. That feeling of being lost on our inner journey can be masked by passions, daily tasks, or material possessions. You've turned to self-help guides, therapy, my show, and meditation, yet a deeper connection and inner peace just seems out of reach. So today our special guest is Kasia Dodd, who is a pioneering therapist and founder of Inheritance LLC, known for her innovative methods in inner exploration and transformative healing. With over 16 years of practice as a clinical psychologist, she has dedicated her life to a profound journey of understanding the human psyche. Welcome, Kasia.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. So today we're talking about Kasia's book. Her pen name is Katarzyna. You are the dream of the universe. And as you can see, I've read this, okay? So we're going to talk about this book. Okay, let's see where I want to start. All right. You start off chapter 1 with the question, is the sensation of internal separation a curse condemning us to suffer? And you say the answer to the above is no. Why is that?
From my perspective, this separation is just an optical illusion, and I literally mean optical. What I mean by this is that exploring the deeper structure of awareness, of our self-awareness, I noticed that the core of every one of us, the essence, the soul, the essence, I think would be the best description. It's always there. We are never separated from it. But there is this mind who needed to become self-aware, meaning the essence in us is always is, but it doesn't know anything about itself. It just is. But then when we become self-aware, we need to have two angles. There must be two parts. So there's something and there's observer. So then by observing, we become self-aware. So there's this separation, this artificial kind of separation. There's a part of us that kind of separates from us, but only to become the observer. It's not a real separation. So we always are, but at the same time, we are separated from our own self just to observe, not to be separated. Okay. But because we don't have the self-awareness developed yet, we think that we are separated. And the belief in this separation from self and from life and from everything is the root of everything. And I said at the beginning, optical illusion, because the self-awareness part, the one who detaches from the core self, it is how I see it on the deeper level. It is a light that dances in different angles in the certain structure. I know it sounds crazy or maybe like it's too abstract, but it is the optical, some kind of optical chamber in us, and the play of light and different angles. The light is traveling there. It's literally optical. That's why we see the inner child, inner self, the inner core. We see it. I mean, I don't know how to explain it.
Well, we'll go more into depth. We're
Okay.
going to break this down, okay?
Okay.
So, and that is a concept that is well above most of our heads, but we're going to break it down, okay?
Okay.
Because you know what you're saying. It's very difficult for you to explain it in a sentence or
Yes.
a paragraph. I understand that. Okay, so in the book, you start off talking about how animals are horizontal to the earth and
Mm-hmm.
humans are vertical. So, what does that give us? What advantage does that give us over the animals, or maybe not?
Mm-hmm. Well, how I understand it, how I see it is that um, the the axis of our body, it's the spine, it's the inner, it's the core, it's the spine, and when it's horizontal, like animals, most of animals have, um, it has a lot of gravitational points that pulls you to the ground. So if it's in this if it's in this horizontal way, there's a lot of surface to be pulled down by the gravitation. If there's a if and if the spine is upright, there's only one point of gravitation pulling you down. So it's how I see it. It's the chance for the self-awareness, the energy to be lighter, to go a little bit higher. It's not pulled so much into the earth, into the survival instinct,
Okay.
into the selfish needs. So it gives us a chance to kind of be a little bit above and be lighter and open the awareness to things outside or beyond the only the survival instinct like animals
Okay.
have.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I think we have an up and a down, and up, and you don't really I don't think you really go into the spiritual aspect of all this, but the up would be the connection to source, I guess, and the
Yes.
down would be the grounding to the earth
Yes.
that we live on.
Yes. Yes. And the grounding, if I can add here, the grounding here, the upward position, it also gives us the chance to go deeper into the ground or deeper into the darkness, which is down. In so so when the higher we go, the deeper we go too. So the bigger light, the brighter light, the darkest darkness at the bottom. So it's like in a mirror, you know. You
Hmm.
go one way, the other side goes deeper. So you go higher, you go deeper, you go lower, you go deep, you go higher, you go at the same
Okay.
time.
Okay.
So and this axis allows us to do it because animals they are more attached to the surface and to the instincts this way.
Mm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So, you say that peace, security, and harmony start to become internal states that do not have to depend on the external situation, and animals can't do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
what is the internal state? And maybe we need to elaborate as we go on, since this is,
Mm-hmm.
really deep information. Um,
Yes.
what is the internal state that allows us to have this versus the way an animal may not?
Mm-hmm. This is the self-reflection ability that people have, meaning you can turn your attention inwards and feel your internal states, how you feel inside. We can meditate, we can reflect, we can explore the subconscious or unconscious. Animals are kind of not interested in because I don't think they have this ability. I mean, maybe they do. I am not an animal, but we don't see it judging by their behavior. So, so when we get this self-reflection ability to go inside, we not only are, but we are learning who we are. I mean, we don't only feel who we are, but we also start knowing who we are. Um, so that's different of only from only being. And when we start knowing who we are, we can start regulating it, who we are,
Mm.
because we are aware of some internal mechanisms or something we like, we don't like, and we may we have this ability to change it by reflection, by self-reflection, by going inside. So also, um, we are connected like animals, like every human, like every living being. We are connected to the whole universe who created us. It's all connected. It's all one. And I mean humans, by having the self-awareness, we can start consciously co-create with the big whole. We are not only receivers of it, we can also co-create because we have the self-reflection and we can go in and know it.
Okay. Um, you say the price of gaining self-awareness is high. It involves letting go of many basic instincts, attachments, and comfort zones of what is known, safe, predictable, and automatic. That sounds
Mhm.
kind of scary.
It is. Most people are.
Yeah.
Yes, because we are animals. On the base level, we are animals. We have the same animal instincts as every animal. We are afraid of pain. We are afraid of death. We have those automatic mechanisms in the base brain that want to protect us from death, from injury. So we have that. And in order to become self-aware and become more conscious, more self-aware, we have to fight sometimes those instincts because to go beyond your comfort zones, um, you know, something that it's the comfort zone, it's on the animal level. So all animals strive for comfort too. They want to be comfortable and safe, and they want to be in predictable environment. But when we want to go beyond that, we want to leave our comfort zone because we see something more, or we want to explore more, or we feel that there is something more, and we want to go beyond. We have to confront ourselves with those instincts to survive, to be comfortable, to be safe, because going beyond it's not safe, it's not comfortable. I mean, usually it is, but that's what the mind thinks. Uh, so 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 it's not easy. And the deeper some mechanisms are in our construction, the bigger the fear of death and destruction we have as a reaction to leaving those mechanisms. So sometimes when we dive deep spiritually or in meditation, or we want to heal something, those defense mechanisms will wake up, and it will sabotage us. It will tell us it's bad, it's wrong, it's better to stay where you are, even if it's destroying you. It's better to stay where you are. Don't go there. It's even worse. Stay here. All this comfort, and the comfort of being in something that it's known. Unknown for the animal is just by default dangerous. If animal doesn't know, if you observe animals, if animal is put in the unknown environment, it's all on alert because it's expecting that something bad is going to happen. So it's our animal instinct, so we have to fight those if you want to become human beings.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So you break up the consciousness into the animal, the human
Mm-hmm.
dualism, inner parent, inner child, um, animal, human being dualism, which is inner parent, inner child, and then the adult self-awareness unity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
what's the difference between the inner parent and the inner child?
Mm. Yes. So how I saw it, working with people, and being really, really um, attentive to trying to figure out why certain things bother people so much, why they have those problems. I started noticing that the structure of self has two parts. And I used to work with inner child years ago. Um, like the same way, like it's common way many therapists work. But then when I was working with the inner child with people, um something was bothering me. And so eventually I noticed that th there's also inner parent. It's not only the inner child. And then I thought, when we say child, by default there must be a parent. child cannot exist without parent. And when we have an adult person who is called parent, by default, it means that the person has a child. So those are two things that cannot exist without each other.
Okay.
There can't be just a child or just a parent.
Right.
If the adult person doesn't have a child, it cannot be called a parent.
Okay.
So my question was, where is the parent in this healing child, inner child therapy? And so once I thought about it, it started to it became more and more clear that there are two different parts to the I, the inner self we have. There's the inner child and there's the inner parent. And the inner child is the essence, the fire that we come in to this world, the potential that comes here and wants to express itself and develop itself and become something.
Mm-hmm.
But when we are born, we don't have the inner parent structure yet. We are just this pure energy, this essence, wild and like children, right? So then we have the external parent who is helping us to shape the potential that we came to this world with.
Okay.
And then when the child is developing, the inner parent structure too with the development. So, and the inner parent structure, it is the inner protector, the intelligence, the understanding, planning, figuring out, filtering what's wrong, what's good, choosing. So in time, we get the parent inside. We don't need the external parent anymore to regulate our life. We have the inner parent that regulates our life.
Okay.
But the dynamic between the inner child and the inner parent in us when we are adult is the dynamic, the reflection. It is the relationship. I mean, it is a reflection of the childhood relationship we had with the
Okay.
external parent.
Okay.
So it's kind of the relationship between the child and parent moves in to the inside to a person, and then whatever the dynamic was in our childhood, then we replay it again in ourselves as an inner child and inner parent now. So whatever the inner parent, the structure of the inner parent experienced and coded and remembered from the interaction with the outside world, that's what we have in our inner parent now when we are adult. Okay. So simple question, a simple example, for example, when you had some gift for painting, for example, and you wanted to really paint and you were painting and when you were a child and there was a critical parent who said, oh, don't do it, you have to have some serious job in your life and not just just painting, and you will never survive painting, right? So that's the information. So there's the potential and there's the information about the potential that comes to the child world. And the information is not reflecting what the child is and wants and likes. It's different. But the information from the mother that don't do it, it's bad, it's wrong, will be written on the inner parent structure. So then, you have this dynamic and you're an adult person and you want to do something exciting in life. And suddenly this voice, don't do it, right? That's the inner parent talking, which is the voice of let's say the mother
okay.
who was saying this thing. So when we work with the inner parent structure, when we work with the self, we work with the inner parent structure, the bad parent in us, not with the child. Because the moment, the child is always happy, always enthusiastic, always wants to explore the world and be happy and jump and laugh and everything. Child always wants to do it. It cannot do it because it doesn't have the parent that will convey this into the world. So the moment when the parent is healthy and sees the child and its needs, then suddenly the child is happy. There was never any problem. The only problem for the inner child is that it doesn't have a healthy parent. That's the only problem of the child. That's what I think.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think of it as a recording
Mm-hmm.
that's put on, in the brain, that we just play and experience as our own thoughts, where it really is not our own thoughts. So this makes sense. This really
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Uh, and I'm gonna talk to you a little more about about all of what you just said. But in
Mm-hmm.
chapter 2, you talk about borderlines as a condition for existing in the world, and you bring up many things in life that have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, so I use this I use the inner parent um, name for the borderline. It's the same thing.
Okay.
So and we can say if somebody has healthy boundaries, speaking in psychological terms, if somebody has healthy boundaries, it means somebody has a good inner parent who is protecting, who is figuring things out, who always take care of the needs of the child and is also attentive to the external world, is a good mediator, regulator, and interface between the inner world and the outer world.
Okay.
So that's in the psychological terms. That's what the boundary is, the boundary, the borderline, the inner parent. And we cannot exist without it. Every single thing has its own boundaries. We have boundaries in the form of skin on the biological level, but we have those boundaries in psychological world, and it's the inner parent.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
The boundaries are the inner parent.
it's the same thing. It's like think like a little child who is 5. It's kind of really vulnerable and helpless and cannot protect itself. Parent is the boundary for the child.
Okay.
It is the boundary
Okay.
because child doesn't have it yet. It
Okay.
mediates between the world of the child and the external world. It regulates.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I understand.
Yeah.
um, I like when you talk about ego
Mm-hmm.
because I've talked to so many people who say, "Oh, I need to get rid of my ego," and you say it's not about the existence or non-existence of the ego, but the quality. So you say if you hear from some enlightened person that they have gotten rid of their ego, stop and think twice because they either cannot fully explain this phenomenon or have such an overgrown ego that they can no longer see it, and it appears to them they no longer possess it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
tell us, why it's so important that we keep
Mm-hmm.
our ego.
Yes, because the ego, when you think about in a pure way about the ego, without all the attachments that we have attached to this word, the ego is the structure of the inner parent. The ego is the structure that allows us to be aware, to navigate this world, to understand, to regulate, to figure out, to plan. That's the ego structure. That's in a pure form. We cannot exist on this earth without the ego structure. It helps us to be, it's the container. I call it the form, the container in which the essence, the soul, the inner child exists. So the essence, the inner child, it cannot think, it cannot plan, it cannot reason. It just wants to be and play and be enthusiastic. And so but it needs some kind of a direction. It's some kind of a form that it can be contained in. And then that's the ego structure, that's the container. And now, so we cannot exist without the container. We would just kill ourselves or do something disastrous if we didn't have the ego structure. But it's about the quality of the ego structure. So if the ego structure is dirty, if I can say it, dirty, or has a lot of written bad beliefs about life, about the self, then it becomes kind of a controlling, wild, not functioning well structure. Because the function of the parent, the ego structure or the boundary, is to protect the child, is to help the inner child to be in the world and be shaped in a certain way or form. If the parent doesn't do it, if the ego structure doesn't do it well, it becomes too controlling, suffocating, disconnected from the source, meaning from the inner child, from the essence in you. And we call it ego because when we see somebody who is selfish, who is controlling, who has bad behavior, we say that this person has ego. But it's not that the person has ego. Everybody has ego. It's just that this person who behaves this way has malfunctioning ego. The ego, if we talk about structures, I see the ego as a absolutely transparent structure. So using the metaphor, if you have a water and a jug, if you put the water inside the jug, then the water is shaped by the jug.
Okay.
It becomes the shape of the water becomes the shape of the jug. And that's what the inner child does, because the inner child is just a wild, unkempt energy. If it's put in the container, then it becomes shaped. Now, when the jug is dirty, it has fingers, paint, or it's cracked or something, then the jug is not pure anymore. The structure is not pure anymore. It has, so let's say it has bad beliefs written in it, the inner structure of the parent has bad beliefs. It's not pure, it's not transparent anymore. So the inner child will project in the world something that it's not true, because it doesn't go purely through the invisible wall of the jug. It's not going in a pure way outside. It has some nightmares written on those jug, and that's what will be projected in the world from the inner child. So that's why it's crucial to clean this inner structure of the parent the way that it's so transparent that it feels like it doesn't exist, because it's so clean. It's so transparent, you don't see it, but it's physically there containing the wild energy.
Interesting. That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When does the inner child begin? Is this in utero or upon birth?
The inner child, I think it's just it happens during the conception when the two essences from those cells come together and they become one essence of the third creation in that moment. Then when the inner child structure is born,
Mhm.
I
So,
think.
is that affected by the parent or the adult who is has conceived this child? So, is there an influence, in other words, on that inner child um, at the point
Mhm.
of conception in utero?
I personally, I don't think so. Because when you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and you reach this very center of the self or the I, there's just pure power. There's nothing else. It's it's untouchable. There's not. It's so, how do you say it? It's so pure in its existence that when you approach it with something unclean, it will disappear. It is so pure.
Okay.
And I call it the inner child, but it's in the purest form, the inner child. But when there's conception, there's generational trauma present too.
Right.
So when the body is being formed, in the process after conception, there's generational traumas in the body already. but the pure essence inside, I think it can't, I don't think it can be touched by anything destroyed or affected somehow. You just have to go through the layers, of those different
Right.
traumas and beliefs and uh, yeah, and to get to the inner child, to the essence.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So if there, and in many cases there is generational trauma, which means that this is why, healing ourselves is complicated
Mm-hmm.
because there are many layers to
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so the ego is basically, is it our opinion of ourself?
In this unclean form it is.
Okay.
Because the ego should be, the let me say it this way. The inner child is always here and now. It doesn't have any memory. It's always here and now.
Well,
The inner parent structure, this one has memory. And now when there's a trauma, the memory is written there as a kind of a stopped, frozen in time moment,
mhm.
and it's there written on the inner parent structure, and it contains beliefs, convictions, and once they are released, and when the beliefs are written there, they are being projected on the child.
Okay.
So the child doesn't want it, but the parent projects it on the child anyway. So once you release the trauma or the beliefs, the inner parent structure has no interest, no business to have any beliefs about anything. Because when there's a good connection between the inner child and the inner parent becomes is in the moment too. It's always in the moment too. The observer who observes in the moment, but at the same time, it's connected to the whole universe through the inner child. So the more the inner parent is connected to the child, the less beliefs about anything it needs because it trusts the inner child to the point that nothing else is needed because the inner child is connected to the whole universe always and always and the universe is always wants best for us if we really listen to it.
How do we clean the inner parent?
Mm. Well, of course, there are, millions of methods, therapy, meditation. I do EFT, the emotional freedom techniques with people. It's a very simple and effective method. So all the stuck energies, stuck emotions, stuck beliefs that we have in the body, or in the system, we just do whatever we can to release it so it's not viable anymore, so we can be more and more in the present, not filtering the world through some written beliefs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in typical inner child work, um, we take on the role of the adult or parent that wasn't there for the child
Mm-hmm.
to help that child feel safe to come forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is
Mm-hmm.
typical inner child.
Yes.
Okay, so how does that relate to what you're saying, or is that a different concept?
In a way it does, because you still are healing the same stuck trauma. It's just that you stop seeing the inner child as a victim. It's not a victim anymore. That it's so for example, when you are 5 and you go through some trauma at home and it's too much for you, so it's stuck in your system as trauma. So it's not stuck in the inner child's structure, it's stuck in the inner parent structure. So you're not healing the inner child, you're healing the inner parent,
Okay.
because it's the belief of the inner parent that that's what happened, and it's still happening, because it's stuck as a memory, so it's
Right.
still the same after years. So you don't have to project it on the child. The child is fine. The child is always fine.
Mm.
Yeah, so you just fix the parent, not the child.
Fix the parent.
Yeah, literally.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So why is the parent, the inner parent, so fearful of this change of changing?
Oh, because because the inner parent structure is created to regulate, and when the how you say it, how to say it, so it regulates the inner world and outer world. It's supposed to regulate. When it's not well connected to the inner child and it has bad beliefs, the regulation turns into control. So then we want to control, and so the ego, the inner parent, it wants to control and not regulate. The control is always kind of in closed mind.
Yes.
Um, Action, it's not listening, not regulating, it's control. So when the inner parent structure is kind of separated from the inner child, it's lost. It wants to control, and it doesn't want to release this control, give up this control, because it thinks it won't survive without the control.
Okay.
So there's always the resistance here from the inner parent. It wants the control
It wants
because
to
it
control.
believes that only if I control, it will be safe.
So that brings us into narcissism, and which you talk about in here. And so all that you're saying, in my mind, because of what I do, I'm thinking inner parent, narcissism, projecting control, to an innocent child, and being fearful of that taken away and everything like that. Um, so do you have an opinion on since we know that narcissistic personality disorder is developed in childhood as a result of some level of intolerable trauma.
Yes.
And basically that true self becomes masked and a false self begins. Okay.
Yes.
So how would you explain that in terms of what you're saying?
I would say that the disconnect between the inner parent and the inner child is so vast and severe and huge that the inner parent cannot see the inner child anymore, or is so afraid of the inner child anymore that it's keeping the inner child in a dungeon and doesn't want to exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the bigger disconnect between those two parts of the structure, the more severe, sociopathic or narcissistic disorders we will have.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, and this really shows clearly that the divide between an inner child and the inner parent.
Yes.
So now
Yes.
the inner parent is really afraid
Mm-hmm.
of what, afraid of, are they afraid of the inner child, or?
It could be
Okay.
afraid, hating the inner child, or
Right.
all kinds of,
Loathing,
yeah.
self-loathing, that kind
Yes,
of thing.
yes. Yeah. And one thing that worth mentioning is that um, what the inner parent structure does, it gives the attention to the inner child. Attention meaning it's always looking at the inner child, considering its needs, treats it as something really most important and precious. So that's why in the narcissistic personality disorder, when the inner parent doesn't want to see the inner child, that's why those people are vampires for attention. They just suck the attention from other people because they cannot live with attention. They have to fill the inner void with somebody's attention, admiration, or praise, or what have you.
Reaction, emotion, any of those things.
Anything, exactly, because the inner parent structure is not giving it to the inner child. It's totally turned back. It doesn't want to see it and sees everything else but the inner child.
And this gives us that feeling that they're vacant.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they're really missing the
Yes.
core of who they should be, right?
Exactly. It's not a metaphor. It's literally, you can see it in the structure.
Right. And what confuses people is that, narcissists are brilliant at blending in.
Yes.
And so they look like anybody else. And they can also act in ways that seem somewhat normal. So it's very difficult for people to realize that this is really not even like a whole person here. The brain is not functioning like a whole person would function. And this explains a lot, really does.
If I can add one more
Yeah,
thing
absolutely.
here.
I would love for you to.
I was just thought about this mirroring, that it's so characteristic to narcissistic personality disorder. The inner parent structure is supposed to mirror the inner child.
Okay.
It's supposed to mirror it and give it feedback loop, the feedback information, But because the inner parent is turned
Away.
totally 180 degrees, they mirror everything else but the inner child.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
This is quite fascinating. This really is, I love learning. I mean, I love learning in general, but this just gives us another explanation of how all of this occurs, because people are just so, they just can't even understand how something like this could happen.
Yeah.
But based on, your theory and your explanation, it really makes sense. Some of us may know this and some of us may not, but you say that contrary to popular belief, happiness and fulfillment do not come from achievement, success, or social status. And we know that because there are many people that achieve and are not happy. So where does it come from?
Well, it comes from the inner child, because the inner child, the essence, is the one who is happy with everything. They are happy to explore, they are happy to experience, they are happy to touch, to do anything, because the inner child is the one that feels and it's happy. So the inner parent structure, is the one who organizes the space, the world. So you go to school, you learn, you achieve, you become expert on something. So you shape yourself into something in the world. But if the inner child is not present, there's nobody inside to be happy about it. You just achieve it because you can, but it's empty.
Okay.
So you're never satisfied. So the inner child must be present with the inner parent everywhere you go, and whatever you do, then you're happy about anything. You can sit and look at the tree and be the most happy person in the world, or you can achieve everything in the world you can imagine, and you can be totally unhappy. It's just the presence of the inner child makes a difference.
Interesting. So we have to, as adults, we have to cut through the inner parent. Or are we cutting through it, or are we clearing it out?
Well, both, I would think, because you cleaning the dirty structure of the form, the boundary, the inner parent, and then then it becomes transparent, and then when it becomes transparent, then information just flows through from the inner child outside, from the outside to inner world. There's a harmony, then there's no obstruction, there's no obstacles in the flow of the worlds, the information.
So the inner parent is really the essence of what we have. Dual essences, right? We have the inner child and the inner parent. Okay.
Yes, it's one I, it's one self, but it has those two different components that they cannot exist without each other. To only when they are, united, we feel whole. We feel harmonious. We feel, complete.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's all interesting. Let's see. You make a statement that what is rejected inside translates into accepting something harmful from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Rejected inside translates into accepting harmful from the outside. So let's talk about that in terms of a toxic inner parent, or dirty, as you say, inner parent. I'm going to let you explain it.
Okay. So when I was exploring this mechanism inside, I noticed that there are two different areas, and there's one area, and this is the area between the inner child and the inner parent. Everything, it has to be accepted, meaning whatever the child feels, it has to be accepted always 100%. It cannot be rejected. This is like a space of complete acceptance.
Okay.
And then there is the other side of the inner parent who looks at the outside world. And that's the space where we don't accept everything. We choose. So some things are harmful, we let it go. Some things we want or need, we let it in. So now when the inner parent is confused and it's, accepting what not supposed to be, and vice versa, then, example, let's say that the inner child would like to, let's use the previous example, to paint. So the inner child wants to paint. It has this talent for painting. But the inner parent has a bad idea about it because the parent says, well, you should be a doctor or a lawyer because that's the way to be in this world.
Right.
So the parent is rejecting what was supposed to be accepted.
Okay.
Now it will turn into something that the inner parent structure will accept from the outside world that's supposed to be rejected.
Okay.
So in that case, what would be the example? So the inner child still wants to paint, but it can't. And the inner parent structure has this idea that the child needs to go to in order to have a good position in the society. The inner child needs to go to a medical school, for example. So the person goes to the medical school, but it doesn't want to. So,
and this is what's considered harmful.
Exactly. Harmful because it will cause misery, unfulfillment, problems, drugs, numbing things, doing things you don't want, because it's so something that was supposed to be rejected because the child wanted to paint and didn't want to go to medical school. But because the painting was rejected, now something is accepted, was supposed to be rejected because it was not natural, but there was this fake belief that this will give you something.
Right.
So now you go to medical school and then you're a totally unhappy doctor who ends up doing drugs. For example. Yes.
Yeah.
Really, we have those stories.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
I like your definition of spirituality, the ability to let go of what seems necessary, important, and valuable.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different take on what spirituality is, but
Yeah.
it is absolutely true what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that, that all religious systems actually want the same thing.
Hmm.
Just that. To release, to release whatever is, to let go, to release, to forgive, in some way or form. All spiritual approaches and religions, they want that. They want to be lighter. They want you to be lighter, meaning let go. Um, and that's the fact that we are upright gives the ability to release what's important on the animal level, the
Hmm.
safety, the survival, the instincts, the fight, territorial, being territorial. If we want to be those enlightened people who are more free inside, we have to let go of those things that are automatic, instinctual, and are supposed to keep us safe. There's another level of safety, of feeling safe, developing after we release those animalistic
Hmm.
basic
Hmm.
survival mechanisms.
Right. That can be scary to do.
It is, yes, but it's only scary at the beginning. Once you get sense of it and you teach your system that absolutely nothing wrong or bad is going on, then you just can do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Let's talk about what you call false responsibility, or we
Mm-hmm.
know it as guilt. Um, you say guilt is the root and source of all distortions of what is good and harmonious in human self-awareness. Just as physical death is the end of life of the body, guilt is the end of life of the deeper self.
Mm-hmm.
Guilt is so powerful and so
Mm-hmm.
dangerous to us. So, what are
Yes.
you saying?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about this.
Yes. So I also noticed that looking at the kind of the mechanical way, at the structures of how the self-awareness works. So if you imagine that there's this inner child and there's this parent, and the parent is always supposed to pay attention to the child and have the 100% of the parents should be focused on the child.
Yes.
Then you are whole, you are harmonious, you are happy, you are content, you are safe. And so the job of the inner parent is to be responsible for the inner child, the essence, the soul, the potential, whatever you call it,
Okay.
responsible. So then you are yourself, you acknowledge your gifts, you are confident, and you're just expressing the gifts in the world because those gifts are needed. So when the parent, because of trauma or wrong beliefs, is turned and it doesn't want to be can't be or doesn't want to be responsible for the child, it looks outside to other things, to the world, to other people, to relationships, to careers. And wherever the attention of the inner parent is turned or put on, that thing becomes the self. And it's, of course, the false self, because nothing from outside of you can be yourself.
Okay.
So so suddenly the inner parent structure wants to be responsible for something outside, and it can't. And but it's convinced it has to be. But then when something happens and the structure cannot, the parent cannot be responsible, it feels guilty. It feels guilty because if it cannot be responsible for example, maybe let's use example.
Okay.
So let's say that you are a child and you have very critical parents and nothing pleases them. So it's a trauma for you because for the healthy development you need praise, you need the adequate reflection of what you do and who you are.
Right.
but nothing can please your parents. So then you start controlling the parents' behavior to receive this admiration, to receive the acknowledgement, to receive the praise. So you as a child, you're not concerned with your development anymore. You're concerned with how my parents react. And I want to control and behave the way so they react the right way. So I will receive my praise or I receive my acknowledgement. So that's how the wrong direction starts developing. So the child wants to control the emotions of the parents to receive what it needs to receive. So then when you go and, when you do it for a long time in your childhood, you go into adult your life and suddenly you are this oversensitive person who always wants to take care of how other people feel. And it seems that you are really sensitive. Oh, this person is so sensitive, always concerned about other people's feelings. But actually, it's a control mechanism because the pattern at the bottom of this person is, oh my gosh, if I don't control how this person feels, she or he will reject me. So I have to modify so those people pleasers, right? I have to modify my behavior to evoke certain reaction in the other person. So then the other person gives me acceptance.
Yes.
Now, when you can't do it for whatever reason, let's say you're at home and you feel sick and your friend calls you and says, hey, you know what? I need some help. Could you come and help me with this? And you can't because you are sick. You will feel guilty. Oh my gosh, I hurt this person. Oh, I'm a bad person because because I was supposed to be good and she'll be offended now, blah,
Right.
blah. So you feel guilty. So the moment when the responsibility is misplaced, so you're not responsible for how you feel, but you want to be responsible how she feels, it immediately creates the guilt. It's like the two sides of the same coin. Misplaced responsibility, taking care of something else that is not yours, and immediately you will be in guilt on the other end of it. Yes.
Such a painful
Yes.
emotion or whatever. So there's false guilt and there's true guilt. Guilt is there to make us accountable for things
Yes.
we may do wrong, So what is there a way to explain that mechanism? The true guilt? Like how would you explain that mechanism?
Yes, I would say that I like to call it responsibility, not guilt.
Okay.
Okay. Because
or accountability.
Yes. If you can't be accountable or responsible for your own self, then when guilt appears only. If you can be, if it's, for example, if it's painful, let's say,
so I commit a crime, I rob a store.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So yes, so that would be if you become responsible for what you did, you don't feel guilty anymore. If you acknowledge that there's some part of you inside that was really desperate, that was wrong informed about something or had severe trauma, and that part of you pushed you to commit the crime, yes, then you feel guilty. But the moment you acknowledge that part of you that pushed you there is no guilt anymore. Because you become self-responsible for the part of you that made you to do it.
Okay.
The moment when you sit in guilt for years, because, oh, I did something 10 years ago, I still feel guilty. It means that you still didn't take responsibility for that part of you. And the part of you is usually some hurt, some hurt part. It's not evil. It's some really rejected, heard, not acknowledged part that didn't know how to do it better. So it acted out this way to just like, okay, you don't see me. Finally, maybe you will see me when I do this. So, and when you do, then the guilt is gone.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Kasia. Wow. This is really good stuff. I like it. I like it. Well, I'm going
Thank
to
you.
show your book again. You are the dream of the universe. Okay. Um, Kasia talks about all of this, and she's got some really cute illustrations in here, funny illustrations to represent what she's talking about. But I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Mm.
Really been
Thank you, me
really
too.
been so interesting. Yeah. Gives me food for thought. I'm always trying to figure this stuff out. Um, and as I said to you before we went on air, I've actually never heard this perspective before. So, but the way that you have explained it, every bit of it makes, I mean, no matter which way we go, it always makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you're the founder of Inherence LLC. So what is Inherence LLC?
Well, Inherence LLC, it's just a business name. The LLC is the business name.
Right.
But Inherence is the method of working with the inner parent and inner child structure.
Okay.
And there's me and there's my friend Eva. She lives in Poland and she's a brilliant therapist. And we met 7 or 8 years ago, something like this. And it clicked immediately, and we started talking about those inner structures, and we get each other without words. And we started meeting. I'm here in the US. She's in Poland. We visited only a few times. And so we meet every week for hours, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes there were times 7 hours. We meet and we both connect, combine, and dive deep in the structures. You can develop, those. You can develop the skills, how you see the deeper level.
Right.
And so we try to figure out how those things work at the bottom of everything. And that's how the inherence process was born.
Okay.
So it is, the inherence process is a process. It has few steps that you go through. And what you do, you align those two structures to a perfect alignment. So if there's a misalignment between inner child and inner parent, and the parent is looking somewhere else and is preoccupied with some external worlds, and it doesn't take care of needs of the child, and the child is wild and doing crazy things because it doesn't know how, and then you have mess in your life. When we go deeper and when we align the inner parent structure back to the right position, suddenly everything flows.
Okay.
And you enter like a different dimension, and you see the same world from a completely different perspective. So it took us 7 years, to come up with this process, and we didn't know. We were just having intention of to find out, and piece by piece by piece by piece, the way was shown.
The picture came together.
Yes.
Yeah. So you work directly with clients or patients now?
Yeah. I mean, I've been working with clients for 17 years, I think now, mostly doing EFT, and I still do EFT because some people love the method and it works really fast on the, stuck emotions. But I started doing the inherence process with people maybe 2 years ago. We did some workshops, kind of pilot workshops 2 years ago, 3 groups, and there were amazing results. So we are going to combine our forces together and develop something more organized in terms of workshops, inherence workshops.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work virtually or do you work?
Yes.
Okay, you do. Okay.
Yes.
So what is your website, Kasia?
Website is katarzynadodd.com.
You better spell that.
It's okay. I don't know if I can. I would have to
I'll
write
spell
it
it.
down.
Katarzyna. And then the last name is Dodd, D-O-D-D, two Ds. Okay. So KatarzynaDodd.com?
Yes.
Easy. Okay.
Yes.
Easy, easy, easy. So you can see the name right here. But she goes by Kasia. Kasia.
Kasia, yes, that's the short form.
Kasia? Kasia.
Kasia,
Okay.
yes.
Kasia. Okay. See, I said Kasia, but it's Kasia. All right.
I understand you perfectly.
Right. I speak English, not Poland. Not Polish. Okay, so it's been really, really wonderful. Thank you for sharing this with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I always have such a fun time to talk about those things. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.